You are looking at your dream through the glass of a shop window, and that voice inside already whispers, "This is not for me." You open your mouth to say, "One day I'll get there," while your body holds the quiet certainty that it will never happen. I'm talking about a specific kind of person, someone trapped in a loop of wanting and never receiving. They know the laws. They read the books. They watch the videos. Yet they radiate lack all day long. And nothing changes. What you're going to see here is a deep analysis of the mind of these people. This is not opinion. This is a precise map of how their brain and energy operate when locked in this pattern. I will show exactly how they sabotage their own desires. And most importantly, how to break this destructive cycle and begin to manifest what you truly want. The most interesting thing? You will discover that it's not the universe refusing you. It's you. The question is simple. Are you ready to see if this pattern is rooted in your mind right now? If you are, keep listening. I'm going to dissect how they think. Then I'll show you the mechanisms that keep them poor in spirit and in pockets. And finally, I'll lay out the path out. But first, I need you to admit something to yourself. Do you recognize the voice in the window? Or are you still pretending it isn't there? Listen closely. The diagnosis begins now. And the pattern is more common than you think. The next part is a full scan. It explains how they see themselves and why that self-image is the problem. You don't want to miss it. That scene at the shop window is small, but it reveals a whole wiring diagram. When someone reacts like that, the mind is already running a program. The program has rules, habits, and blind spots. I have seen this template over and over. So what I do here is clinical, not moral. I describe what I see. I name the pattern. I show how it shows up in money, in love, and in everyday choices. First, how they like to see themselves. They call themselves spiritual. They call themselves aware. They wear labels like a shield. I'm not materialistic, they say. I trust the universe, they say. Those phrases sound noble. They sound evolved. They also serve a function. They protect them from having to do the messy work of real change. They create a moral certificate. It reads, "I'm above greed. I don't need to hustle. I am patient." Privately, however, the story is different. When they are alone, the script shifts. They whisper fears into the dark. They check their bank account with an anxious thumb. They count bills in the night and feel shame. They tell themselves they are not ready. They say they will start after they learn more. They believe the right knowledge will save them. In public, they are teachers of possibility. In private, they are students of avoidance. This split is important. It is the first fracture. It creates cognitive dissonance. That dissonance becomes a pressure point. It leaks energy. The person appears calm on the surface. Inside, their nervous system is tense. They practice abundance rituals with one hand while the other hand tightens around fear. The contradiction is not accidental. It is functional. It keeps them safe from risk. And it keeps their life small. Now let's look at behavior. What do they actually do when money appears? The answer reveals more than any affirmation. Imagine a payment notification arrives. The rational part of them smiles. The nervous part checks how stable it is. If the money is temporary, they treat it as a fluke. If the money could change their life, they doubt it. They think, this will not last. Someone will take it away. I don't deserve to charge that much. I will underprice myself to avoid rejection. They avoid looking at prices when buying things that matter. They peek at expensive items and quickly rationalize why it's not for them. They postpone investments in their own work. They enroll in courses as a ritual of preparation. But real commitment to change would require a different muscle. It would ask for consistent decisions that influence the next year. They avoid that. Here is a typical scene. They get a freelance offer. The offer is decent. Their chest tightens. They imagine the worst. What if they can't deliver? What if the client delays payment? So they send a half-hearted reply. They price themselves low to remove doom. The client senses uncertainty. The deal collapses. The person says, "I tried to manifest, but nothing happened." That failure becomes proof. It reinforces the old story. The loop tightens. They also have rituals of spirituality that act like band-aids. They will do a visualization, a 10-minute gratitude list, a moon ritual. They will light a candle and recite sentences about abundance. These rituals are real. But rituals alone are not the work. They are a fragment. You cannot overlay a strategy of casual spiritual practice onto a life built by fear. A 10-minute ritual is a promise to the self. But a 10-minute ritual plus 23 hours of scarcity talk becomes a lie. One of the most revealing behaviors is how they talk about people who are successful. They admire them from a distance. Then they invent reasons why those people are exceptions. They had luck, they say. They don't understand what I went through. Admiration becomes a story of separation. They distance themselves through a moral narrative. It saves them from envy and from the uncomfortable task of examining choices. This group also mistakes knowledge for transformation. They consume. They never apply. Courses pile up. PDFs collect digital dust. They do not test. They do not risk. In their mind, learning is evidence of growth. In practice, it is avoidance dressed as self-improvement. Knowledge without action creates the illusion of movement. It keeps them busy while change waits. There is a second layer to their routine. They over-prepare for failure. They rehearse all possible disasters. This is what they call being realistic. They believe they are protecting themselves. They are not. They are scripting failure into the future. Preparation is not protection when the preparation becomes a life. Preparing for every bad outcome means you never act. You end up making choices that ensure the bad outcome arrives. It is weird, but true. I want you to notice the emotional tone. It is not anger. It is fear. Fear wears moral clothes. It tells the truth in a loop. It says, if I protect myself from disappointment, I will not be hurt. That seems reasonable. But living like that slowly erases capacity. It blunts appetite. It shrinks hope. Your nervous system becomes allergic to risk. Now watch how they handle opportunities, not threats. When an opportunity arrives, they do not recognize it most of the time. Or they recognize it, and then relinquish it. Their inner voice whispers reasons why they should opt out. It is a subtle voice. It is persuasive. It sounds like logic. It sounds like care. But it is avoidance in fine clothing. Because the cost of taking an opportunity is exposure. And exposure is terrifying to someone whose identity fits better in safety. There is also a social script. These people like to be seen as conscious. They speak about compassion, about non-attachment, about the divine timing of things. These phrases work as social currency. They give them status in certain circles. Yet when money is on the table, those same phrases evaporate. They become reactive. The spiritual vocabulary becomes a mask. It becomes a moral alibi. They use it to justify an action. This contradiction is brutal, because by calling themselves spiritual, they escape accountability. Who can fault someone who says they trust the universe? No one. And that is the point. It is easier to blame the universe than to clean your own wiring. I want to map the contradiction clearly. They spend 10 minutes a day aligning to abundance. Then they spend the rest of the day confirming scarcity. 10 minutes of alignment cannot outweigh a lifetime of doubt. The universe responds to your predominant frequency, not your occasional wish. That is the harsh truth. And it is also liberating. It means the problem is local. It sits in your choices. It is addressable. Let me give you more concrete examples. Think of someone who wants a relationship. They watch videos about love. They visualize the partner of their dreams. They place an intention. Then they go to a party. They meet someone interesting. Their chest tightens. They feel unworthy. They immediately move into defensive mode. They test. They push away. They appear aloof because they fear rejection more than they want connection. They end the night alone. They think the universe didn't deliver. But the universe did. Their vibration repelled the very thing they wanted. Another scene. Someone wants financial freedom. They create a vision board. They pin pictures of houses and freedom. Then they see a job promotion opportunity. They think about the extra responsibility. They decide to stay safe. They rationalize. They tell themselves the timing is off. 2 months later, the promotion is gone. At this point, you might be asking, are there variations inside this group? Yes, many. And they matter. The same pattern wears different faces. Some look like devoted students. Some look like weekend mystics. Some hide hope behind sarcasm. Others stop after 3 days and declare it useless. These subtypes show how fear adapts. They also show where intervention must be precise. Before I describe those subtypes, I want to ask something brief. If you are hearing this and it is resonating, please consider helping this channel grow. We are small and honest. If you could hit subscribe and leave your city and country in the comments, it helps us reach 1,000 subscribers. Thank you. Now back to the diagnosis. One subtype cloaks itself in learning. They are the perpetual students. They believe the right course will create the right life. They collect tools and techniques, but they rarely use them. Their identity becomes someone who studies manifestation. They defend this identity with pride. I am evolving, they say, but evolution without practice is a story. It keeps them safe in the liminal space. They avoid the real test of competence, which is acting imperfectly. Another subtype focuses on ceremonies. They do full rituals. They have calendars and auspicious dates. They are sincere. They invest emotional energy into specific moments. But their practice is episodic. They treat manifestation like a seasonal hobby. Ritual becomes an emergency button. When life demands sustained attention, their ritual habits fail them. They think magic should happen at the altar. They forget that magic is an everyday fidelity to a new way of being. Then there are those who wear pessimism as a veneer. They talk about potential. They can lecture on abundance. But each positive statement is followed by a but. I'm manifesting, but you know how things are here. This is the most deceptive style. It looks like awareness. It functions as permission to remain small. Pessimism protects from disappointment, but it also blocks expansion. Finally, there are the impatient ones. They start a practice with intensity. They expect overnight change. When results are slow, they quit. They say, this is not for me. Their belief is transactional. If the universe does not deliver on demand, they assume refusal. They cancel their own request out of frustration. That impatience is a form of self-negation. These subtypes overlap. People can move between them. Many carry features of more than one style. The important point is this. Different faces need different interventions. Telling an impatient person to learn more will not fix their problem. Telling a perpetual student to try harder misses the point. Each face needs targeted work. You might be recognizing yourself in one or more of these faces. That recognition is the start. It is not an accusation. It is an observation. The next step is about mechanisms. Why does this happen? Why does a few minutes of positive thinking lose to hours of fear? Why do rituals fail to change daily habits? I will explain the invisible law that governs this dynamic in the next section. It is a simple rule. It is implacable. And once you understand it, the path forward becomes clearer. But for now, hold this. The mismatch between identity and action is what creates the illusion of trying. You think you are doing something. You are not. The universe is not the enemy. Your predominating energy is. In the next part 1, we'll name that law. I will show you the exact mechanism that turns hope into history. Keep listening. The explanation will change how you see your life. You can see the pattern now. Different faces. Same engine. Each subtype is a costume over the same fear. But names matter. When you name the costume, you stop mistaking it for destiny. So I map 4 portraits. I tell their stories. I show their days. I reveal the belief that orders each life. I do this in first person because I have watched it unfold in real people. I have seen how the belief writes outcomes. And I have seen the moment when the belief is challenged. That moment matters. The first portrait I call the powerless theorist. They are smart and hungry for clarity. They read everything about manifestation. They buy programs. They attend seminars. Their bookshelf is a monument to intention. Yet their calendar is empty of risky moves. Their favorite sentence is a promise. I just need to learn a bit more, they say. It is both rationalization and sermon. A day in their life looks like this. They wake up and list goals. They schedule an hour for study. They scroll forums for case studies. They write a plan. They never run the plan. A freelance offer arrives. They draft a reply. They rewrite it 3 times. In the evening, they watch a webinar on pricing. They nod along. They console themselves. They believe that competence will be the shield against failure. The core belief of the powerless theorist is simple. Knowledge is safety. If I keep learning, failure will not touch me. This belief is subtle. It promises eventual action, but action never becomes urgent. The cost is invisible until years pass. The consequence is stagnation. Money sits on the table, and they watch it like an exhibit. They mistake study for work. And over time, study becomes a way to avoid the risk of being bad at something. If you see yourself here, your honest question is, what would happen if I tried and failed? What if competence is built by trial, not a library? The shift required is to define a minimum viable action and do it imperfectly. It is not glamorous. It is essential. The second portrait is the weekend manifester. They light candles on Sundays and chant on full moons. They are devoted to ritual. They believe that rare, intense charges of energy will bend their week. Their social media is full of ritual aesthetics. They are sincere. They want the life the ritual promises. Their day is a rhythm. Intense practice in the sacred hour. Casual cynicism the rest of the week. They set big intentions on the weekend. Monday returns them to the small habits. When an opportunity that requires regular discipline appears, they are not ready. Ritual gave them a short-lived spike. Habit would have changed their trajectory. Instead, they experience bursts of hope followed by long troughs of old behavior. The belief at the root of the weekend manifester is this: occasional devotion compensates for daily inconsistency. They think ceremonial intensity can override habit. It cannot. The result is repeated emotional highs and long valleys. They feel spiritual, but they remain materially stuck. Their life says one thing. Their ritual says another. The tension never resolves. If this is you, the first step is to translate ritual into routine. Find the tiny daily practice that carries intention into the workspace of your life. Ritual is sacred. Routine is sovereign. The third portrait is the camouflaged pessimist. They are slippery. They can speak in lofty terms. They teach positive principles with a metronome of doubt. Every sentence of hope is followed by a but. They flood their conversations with disclaimers. Their humor is protective. It prevents anyone from seeing fear naked. A day in their style includes the performance of hope and the rehearsal of collapse. At brunch, they compliment success. Then they list reasons why it won't last. A colleague gets a promotion, and they applaud. Internally, they note exceptions. They keep their bets small. They stay within a comfort that feels like realism. But this realism is a trap. It corrodes possibility. It dresses resignation as prudence. Their central belief is, realism protects from pain. If I lower my expectations, I will not be disappointed. That belief produces a life of safe choices. It produces small risks and predictable outcomes. The price is slow attrition of dreams. The camouflaged pessimist misreads resilience for immunity. If this voice sounds familiar, you must learn to distinguish realism from resignation. Realism asks for calibration. Resignation asks for settlement. Choose calibration. The fourth portrait is the impatient manifester. They move fast. They start with fire. They declare big things. They pour energy in. Then the timeline of results is short. When immediate signs do not appear, they quit. Their motto is, if it doesn't happen quickly, it isn't meant for me. Their day is intense and abrupt. They initiate projects with courage. They announce intentions to friends. They expect velocity. When the first friction appears, they retract. They claim fraud. They sink into cynicism. Their pattern repeats. The belief that animates them is, results must be quick or they are false. This belief punishes patience. It converts ordinary delay into perceived failure. The consequence is wasted momentum, but the effect is the same: contraction. Let's walk through a combined day to see how these portraits translate into behavior when money, opportunity, or relationship appears. Imagine a shared scenario. A writing client offers a month-long contract. The powerless theorist reads about pricing. The weekend manifester checks the moon calendar. The camouflaged pessimist prefaces negotiation with disclaimers. The impatient manifester wants a fast yes or no. The result is confusion. The client interprets hesitation as lack of professionalism. The offer evaporates. The four responses are different but converge to the same outcome: no deal. Now see how events compound over months. Small slippages accumulate. Missing the contract reduces cash flow. The person then experiences stress. Stress triggers the old defense stories. The loop deepens. You see the architecture of the pattern. It is not accidental. It is systemic. I want to be blunt about consequences. This tribe of people tends to live in a cycle of near misses. They experience temporary gains that dissolve. They land small wins only to sabotage them. Financially, they undercharge and underinvest. Professionally, they delay launches. Relationally, they avoid vulnerability. Spiritually, they adopt practices without integration. The life that results is one of recurring disappointment. It looks almost stable, but it is brittle. You might be thinking, am I morally failing? No, I insist on compassion. Many of these patterns were adaptive once. Maybe your family punished risk. Maybe your early survival required caution. These strategies saved you then, but now they cost you. The remedy is not self-flagellation. It is re-education of the nervous system. So what does re-education look like inside each portrait? For the powerless theorist, it starts with a promise to do one imperfect thing every week. Not just planning, action. For the weekend manifester, the prescription is to scaffold ritual into daily habit. Small is better than spectacular. For the camouflage pessimist, the practice is to notice the automatic, and question it like a scientist. For the impatient manifester, the training is to call delayed response normal and extend the trial period. I tell these people, in the gentle way of a clinician, that they must practice emotional hygiene. It is a mundane phrase, but it is accurate. Emotional hygiene means noticing the automatic operating system and rewiring it with small repeated choices. It means treating belief like muscle. You exercise it daily. Now let me give you two real stories to illustrate the move from pattern to reprogramming. The first is about Anna. She was a weekend manifester. She meditated on abundance. She lit candles on new moons. She believed in signs. Yet when offers came, she hesitated. I suggested a simple shift. She committed to a 5-minute response ritual she would perform 3 times a day. The ritual was mechanical. She would breathe, name a feeling, and answer a message within 1 hour. That tiny habit changed everything. Within 2 months, she closed consistent clients. Her invoices arrived more regularly. The ritual did not feel spiritual. It felt practical. But the energy of consistency rewired her story. The second story is about Mark. He was the powerless theorist. He bought every course. He never launched. I asked him to publish 1 piece of work each week, no edits beyond a short checklist. The first ones were awkward. He hated them. But he did not stop. After 3 months, his work improved. A small client found him. He earned his first meaningful payment. He said something I remember. The thing I feared was not failure. It was being seen as flawed. But people pay for honest work, not perfection. That realization loosened his identity armor. Both transformations started with a tiny, ugly, unspiritual practice. That is the point. Change is messy. It is not always inspiring. It is consistent. I want to pause here and state something clearly. You can belong to more than one portrait. You can be a weekend manifester who studies obsessively on the side. The patterns are combinatory. The work is therefore personalized. If you try a one-size-fits-all solution, you will fail. Identify your dominant armor. Then choose the smallest practice that contradicts it. Before I close this section, I will ask you one question that you must answer honestly. Which portrait made you feel exposed when I described it? That exposure is useful. It points to the wound. The next step is not to hide from that wound. It is to reframe it as information. If you can name the wound, you can begin to stitch it. In the next part, one will show you the invisible law that governs how these portraits produce outcomes. I will explain the mechanics of the predominant vibration and why occasional rituals cannot override daily energy. That law will change how you interpret luck and failure. It will remove the sense of cosmic injustice. It will also give you a precise lever for change. Stay with me. The mechanism is the key. I call the law I am about to describe the law of predominant vibration. It sounds mystical when you first hear it, but it is mechanical. It explains why brief moments of faith are drowned by long hours of fear. It explains why rituals and weekend devotion rarely change a bank balance or a relationship pattern. Here is the basic idea. Your mind does not send one-off requests into a void. It runs a continuous program. That program has a default setting. The default is what matters. If you spend 15 minutes visualizing and the other 23 hours vibrating scarcity, the program that runs most of the time is scarcity. The universe responds to that program because the universe is a mirror. It reflects back the input it receives most consistently. Think of vibration like a radio frequency. You can tune into a frequency for a short song, but if the station you live on broadcasts a different program all day, the tiny song will never change the channel. You must change the broadcast. You do that not by shouting once, but by changing the pattern you sustain over time. This law is simple. It is not sentimental. It does not care about intention or virtue. It cares about predominance. The emotion you live inside becomes the signal you emit. That signal attracts matching circumstances. If you predominantly feel fear, you will attract fear-aligned outcomes. If you predominantly feel openness, you will begin to bend your life toward openness. Let me be explicit about what predominant means. It is not the number of minutes you spend on a practice. It is the color of your days. It is the tone of your conversations. It is the emotional default that wakes you before coffee and that hums under your thinking during meetings. Predominance is habitual. It is the background music of your life. That music composes your reality. Now I will trace the mechanism step by step, so you can see how invisible patterns create visible results. It begins with perception. A situation appears. Your mind interprets it through a lens built by years of memory, teaching, family stories, and small learned protections. That interpretation births thought. Thought triggers feeling. Feeling drives behavior. Behavior yields consequence. Consequence becomes confirmation. Confirmation rewrites the memory bank. The loop tightens. These stages are not abstract. They have textures. Perception is not neutral. When you see a job posting, you do not just read the words. You feel the weight of past rejections. You hear your inner critic. You taste possibility and risk. Interpretation is not thinking alone. It is story making. It says, I will be judged, or I will be lucky, or they will never pay me. Thought labels the event. Feeling colors your autonomic nervous system. If the label is threat, your body prepares to protect. Protection usually shows as withdrawal or smallness. Behavior in this pattern is predictable. You reply slowly. You underprice. You over-prepare and then not deliver. You test the other person to see if they will still like you. That testing looks like cynicism or like humility dressed as moral superiority. The other person responds to that energy. They feel the hesitation. They retreat. The outcome appears as lack. The lack is then used as proof in your inner narrative. The narrative grows teeth. What I want you to see is that the law does not punish mistakes. It simply mirrors the frequency. If your predominant state is scarcity, the mirror returns scarcity. If it is anger, the mirror returns friction. If it is openness, the mirror schemes back opportunity. There is no moral weight to the mirror. It is a mechanism. That is hopeful because mechanisms can be reprogrammed. Let me connect the law to money, because that is the trigger for me. You do that by interrupting the autopilot that sends fear into the world as your daily broadcast. The intuition you may already have is correct. Short practices matter, but only if they change the predominant. 10 minutes of ritual can set intention, but only repeated choices across your day convert intention into pattern. The law of predominance says that your predominant feeling must be structurally different to change outcomes. Occasional peaks of positivity cannot outvote habitual valleys of fear. This insight kills a lot of myths. It kills the idea that manifesting is a magical stamp you press. It kills the assumption that spiritual identity, uttered once in a post, is equivalent to internal alignment. It also removes the easy scapegoat. The universe is unfair. The universe only reflects. The real question becomes operational. What is your default energy, second by second, day by day? At this point, you should be asking, how does one notice the default? That is the critical pivot. You cannot change what you do not perceive. Noticing is technical. It is not fluffy. It requires the same rigor we would use to track a budget or test a hypothesis. You must become a scientist of your own mood. Track when your mind dips into scarcity. Note how long it stays there. Record the triggers and the bodily sensations. That data is the raw material for reprogramming. There is one more thing to understand about the law. Resistance strengthens the old vibration. When you try to force positivity on top of fear, you create internal friction. That friction is like trying to paint over rust. The paint peels. You must remove rust. You must address the root feelings honestly. That means acknowledging fear without letting it dictate the broadcast. It means practicing a different default not as denial, but as disciplined choice. Now, understanding this law alone is powerful, but useless if you leave it in the realm of theory. In the next section, I will show you the law in action. I will take the law of predominant vibration and put it inside 3 everyday stories. You will see the exact moments where interpretation bends into feeling, where feeling becomes behavior, and where behavior stamps the future. Those stories will feel familiar. They will be small and brutal. They will make clear why the same person can pray for abundance on Monday and sabotage a contract on Tuesday. Stay with me because seeing the loop fully is the only way to break it. The cycle begins quietly. A desire appears. It is simple: a client, a date, a promotion, a relocation. The person lights a candle. They write an intention. Their chest feels warm for a moment. Then a single thought slides in. What if it fails? That thought is small. It seems rational. It is the hinge. That hinge swings everything. Thought alters sensation. The chest tightens. The gut knots. Anxiety moves from concept to body. To soothe that anxiety, the mind rehearses failure like a shield. It lists all the ways the offer could go wrong. It drafts contingency plans. It calls this realism. Actually, it is a rehearsal for the bad ending. I will show you 3 scenes where the loop runs from start to finish. Each one is different, but structurally identical. First scene, the freelance offer. A well-paid month-long contract lands in the inbox at 9:07 a.m. On the surface, this is good news. The person drinks coffee and smiles. Underneath, their inner script kicks in. What if they ask for revisions? What if they delay payments? The mind tightens. They craft a reply and then rewrite it 3 times. They lower their price in a quiet act of self-protection. They add a clause about late payment, as if anticipation will stop suffering. The client senses uncertainty in the tone. The client senses a bargain. The client ghosts. The inbox grows cold. The person experiences evidence. See, I was right, opportunities do not last for me. The loop closes. Second scene, the romantic opening. After months of online swipes, someone with warmth and availability asks to meet. The morning of the date, the person does a visualization. They imagine connection. At the restaurant, a small insecurity arrives. They will find out I'm not as interesting as I pretend. A test appears in behavior. They deflect, they make self-deprecating jokes, they hold back a key part of themselves. The other person senses guardedness and leans away. The night ends politely. Later, the person tells themselves, I attract people who don't stay. The loop tightens. Third scene. The promotion that requires visibility. A manager hints at a leadership track that includes public speaking. The employee wants the role but remembers a childhood where being visible meant criticism. The inner voice says, don't call too much attention to yourself. At the decision moment, they withhold bold ideas in meetings. When offered the promotion, they ask for a stretch assignment as if bargaining out of fear. The company hires someone else who leaned into visibility. The denied promotion becomes proof that the system doesn't reward people like me. In each vignette, the pattern is the same. The bright impulse, the small doubt, the body's tightening, the protective behavior, the outcome that confirms the memory. That structure is the cycle in action. It is efficient. It is conservative. It protects identity by preventing risk. But it also manufactures the very limitation it fears. This loop strengthens because of confirmation bias. Humans are wired to notice evidence that supports their story. If you believe you are unlucky, you will find luck that is tepid and fragile and call it the universal standard. If you believe you are undeserving, you will discount compliments as flukes and treat punishment as teaching. The brain is economical. It catalogs proof and archives it as truth. Over time, the archive becomes the operating system. The cycle also runs on emotional economy. Anxiety is metabolically cheap. It mobilizes attention to threats, but it is a lousy long-term strategy for growth. Sustaining scarcity emotions makes the nervous system habitual. Cortisol patterns lock in. That affects choices, sleep, appetite, social tone. The person becomes biologically aligned with smallness. The world then offers them circumstances consistent with that biology. It is not cosmic revenge. It is statistical alignment. Another factor is social signaling. Many of the people I work with belong to social circles that prize spiritual vocabulary. They speak of non-attachment, cosmic timing, and trust in a language of dignity. That language becomes armor. It allows them to say, I trust the process, while acting from fear. The public statement and the private practice diverge. Socially, they avoid accountability. Privately, they never do the messy work of consistent habit. The misalignment is toxic because it hides the pattern under a moralized identity. You should notice one more thing. Small behaviors predict big outcomes. Answering emails slowly, lowering prices, testing partners, these micro decisions are the compound interest of identity. One lowered rate becomes months of under-earning. One withheld conversation becomes a lifetime of connections that never deepen. These are not dramatic sabotages. They are tiny, boring choices that, repeated, sculpt a life. There is a point within the cycle where self-justification enters. After a deal falls through, the person may say, I tried, or I was manifesting, but the timing wasn't right. Those lines are ways to avoid the real question. What did I do when the opportunity actually arrived? Saying, I tried, sounds noble but often masks minimal effort. Saying the timing was off shifts responsibility outward. That shifting is part of the loop. It keeps the pattern invisible. I want to be explicit about the role of knowledge in this loop. Knowledge without behavior becomes a ritual of avoidance. Courses, books, and strategies give the person a sense of motion while their life stays the same. They consume tools as a proxy for change. The ledger fills with receipts and PDFs, not with results. Knowledge becomes evidence of trying rather than evidence of transformation. Now, notice how the cycle deepens during stress. Stress narrows attention. When resources feel thin, the mind reverts to safety scripts faster. That is why these patterns often worsen with financial pressure. When bills pile up, the default defense becomes more conservative. Hesitation increases. The next opportunity is even more likely to be sabotaged. The cycle enters a feedback spiral. So what breaks the spiral? The first break is noticing. You must catch the hinged thoughts as they appear. That choice is where transformation actually begins. Years of small defeats eventually accumulate into a specific kind of exhaustion. It is not simply tiredness. It is erosion. You wake up and realize your life is a ledger of near misses. The clarity that comes at this moment is brutal. You look at your calendar, your bank account, your relationships, and you see the same signature across every page. That signature is your defended self. I have watched people reach that bottom. They arrive with fury, with pleading, or with a quiet resignation that is more dangerous than anger. The experience is the same. A sudden inability to pretend the pattern is harmless. There is a cognitive shock. They can no longer explain away the consistent outcomes. The narrative of blame external forces, fate, luck becomes thin. The person either doubles down into blame or cracks open. This is the pivot I call the breaking point. It is an invitation and a threat. The invitation is to see your part in the loop and to accept responsibility for changing your internal broadcast. The threat is that if you refuse, the loop tightens into a deeper pattern of scarcity and self-restriction that is harder to reverse. Let me describe what the collapse looks like in the everyday. It might begin with one missed rent payment that triggers an avalanche of shame. It might be a failed relationship that reveals a history of avoidance. It might be a health scare that cannot be ironed out with optimism. The external event is the straw, but the flammable material was already in place. Habitual smallness, avoidance, and the belief system that sustains them. At the psychological level, collapse forces a confrontation with identity. Many of my clients built a self-image around being moral, spiritual, or not materialistic. That identity was protective. It allowed them to avoid the messy work of boundary setting, pricing, negotiating, and honest desire. At the breaking point, that same identity becomes a prison. The person realizes that their righteousness has been a cover for surrender. That realization is violent and clarifying. The emotional landscape of the collapse includes shame, grief, anger, and a cold kind of lucidity. Grief is significant because what collapses is not just external circumstances. It is the dream you were feeding with half effort. You grieve the years of apologetic compromises, the projects never launched, the friendships avoided, the money left on the table. Grief clears space. It is painful but fertile. There is also a moral economy at play. People ask, why did I not notice sooner? The answer is that noticing required energy and risk. It required admitting you were wrong about a way of being that, at one time, protected you. Change is costly. That is why many do not choose it until the pain of staying the same exceeds the pain of changing. The breaking point is where that calculation flips. Now, the fork in the road. After the break, most people choose one of two directions. One path is denial and projection. They double down on blaming the universe, the economy, or other people. They maintain their identity by constructing a narrative of victimhood. That path tends to deepening stagnation. The other path is accountability and repair. This route begins with the small discipline of being honest about where your energy truly goes. Accountability does not mean self-flagellation. It means precise observation and small, ugly experiments. It means choosing an identity of competence over identity of moral purity. It means asking brutal questions like, what did I do when the opportunity arrived? And answering with data, not excuses. It means committing to consistent corrective moves, even if those moves feel imperfect and clumsy. I want to offer two real stories from my practice because they show how the break can become a turning point. The first is Anna. She was exhausted by a life of weekly rituals and daily avoidance. Her break came after a series of lost clients. She finally admitted that her rituals were not translating into daily behavior. Her first step was shockingly small. She promised to answer all client inquiries within 1 hour for 30 days. That tiny discipline rewired her reputation. Clients returned. Money followed. The change did not feel spiritual at first. It felt like work. It also felt like a reset. The second is Mark. He lectured about competence, but hoarded knowledge instead of publishing. His break arrived when he realized that years of buying courses had yielded no income. He began publishing one piece of work per week, unpolished and honest. The first month his writing was clumsy. The third month, a client found him and offered a contract. Mark said something I remember. I feared being seen as flawed. But people pay for honest competence, not for polished invisibility. That sentence is a small manifesto. It points to the heart of the break, visibility over perfection. Both stories show a principle. The break does not require heroism. It requires the humility to perform small, repeatable acts that contradict the old story. The acts are prosaic: respond faster, publish imperfectly, price fairly. They are prosaic because they are effective. There is another layer, the nervous system. The breaking point is also a chance to retrain bodily response. You will not simply decide to stop feeling fear. You must retrain your physiological default. That is slow. It needs repeated exposures that are safe and progressive. The research we take from therapy and habit formation is basic. Small wins accumulate. The body needs evidence that it can survive visibility and responsibility. Each small success reduces the hold of the old fear. But the break is not just about individual shifts. It often requires practical boundary work. Financial repair may require renegotiating contracts, setting clear rates, and building simple accounting habits. Relationship repair may need honest conversations and the willingness to be vulnerable without testing. These are skills. They are teachable. They are not spiritual bypasses. They are adult competencies. Finally, the moral of the breaking point is this. Collapse can be the most honest teacher you will ever meet. It strips rhetoric, reveals patterns, and forces a real choice. If you use it, you will be spared years of small suffering. But you must step into responsibility without the illusion that change is easy or quick. The work is granular and ugly and human. You should feel a mixture of urgency and possibility after hearing this. If you are in the middle of a collapse, know that it is not the end. It is a pivot. If you are approaching one, take this as a warning. Small shifts now prevent harder lessons later. In the next part 1 will show you the first concrete framework for repair, the new pattern I call congruent vibration, and the daily ritual that makes it practical. It is small, it is ugly, and it works. Stay with me, because how you answer the break determines the next decade of your life. I will be blunt. The reason most people never escape the loop is not lack of strategy. It is the absence of a new default. People try charming tricks and weekend rituals, and then go back to the old wiring. That will not work. What changes outcomes is a sustained switch in the nervous system's habitual response. I call that switch congruent vibration. It is simple to name and hard to live, but it is the actual lever. Congruent vibration is not about forcing joy. It's about owning the fact that your predominant emotional tone is the signal you are sending to reality. If your baseline is worry, guilt, smallness, that is your request. If you want a different result, you must recalibrate the baseline. That recalibration happens in tiny, repeatable acts that retrain the body and rewire expectation. The ritual I teach, vibrational tracking, does exactly that. It is the minimum effective dose for shifting a default. Here is the practice in full. 3 times a day: morning, midday, evening. Pause for 60 seconds. Step 1. Name the emotion without editorializing. Say to yourself, what am I feeling right now? Answer in one word. Step 2. Ask this brutal question. If this emotion created my next 48 hours, what would appear? Picture the likely scenes briefly. Step 3. Choose one emotion you can reasonably hold for the next several minutes: curiosity, steady confidence, interest, and breathe into that feeling for 30 seconds. That's it. The practice takes 2 minutes total. Do it like brushing your teeth. Do it like paying a bill. I use the language of choice because responsibility is the corrective. When I say choose, I mean it literally. You will feel the old emotion want to stay. Name it. For others, the anchors are relational. Initiate one vulnerable conversation each week. Say yes to one social invitation that feels slightly outside your comfort zone. The anchors serve a double purpose. They produce tangible outcomes, and they send feedback to your nervous system. Visibility doesn't kill you. I want to be explicit about tempo. The ritual rewires the nervous system slowly. Expect measurable shifts in 30 to 90 days. Expect internal resistance the first 2 weeks. Expect small wins and plateaus. This is not a weekend workshop. It is a discipline. I ask clients to treat it like dental hygiene, non-negotiable. When someone treats it that way, the world stops matching the old signal. Let me give you 2 stories, because stories make the mechanical humane. Anna came to me after years of ritualized spirituality and chronic undercharging. She would visualize 6-figure months on Sundays and then send lowball proposals on Monday. Her break was practical. She committed to vibrational tracking and a promise to respond to every client email within 1 hour for 30 days. The first week she felt awkward. Her old anxiety kept whispering about rejection. By week 3, a strange thing happened. 2 clients responded enthusiastically to promptness and clarity. By week 6, she had increased her rates without losing clients. The ritual didn't manifest money like magic. It altered her default, so she made different offers and followed through in ways that produced money. Mark's case is different but instructive. He hoarded knowledge for a decade: courses, notes, half-started projects. He called himself a professional student and felt morally superior to pushy marketers. He began vibrational tracking and committed to publish 1 article per week, imperfect and available. The first month his pieces were clumsy. The 3rd month a client found one of the essays and offered a contract that led to steady work. Mark realized people value honest competence, not polished invisibility. The ritual didn't hand him success. It returned him to a posture where success could reach him because his behavior matched his desire. Both stories show the same architecture: inner shift plus small, visible acts. The internal practice weakens the old prediction. The behavioral anchors create opportunities for the new prediction to be tested. One without the other is theater. Together, they are repair. You will encounter sabotage mechanisms. The cheapest is moralization. You will tell yourself you are too spiritual to care about money, or not the kind of person who self-promotes. That language is armor. It protects your identity while keeping you small. Name it when it appears. Say, "This is the moralization voice. It's protecting the old comfort." Then choose an action anyway. The ritual trains tolerance for discomfort. You do the visible thing even while the old voice squawks. The second sabotage is impatience. People expect overnight results. When the world doesn't rearrange in 72 hours, they declare the method invalid and return to the old loop, louder and more desperate. The cure is a simple commitment window: 30 days. If you do vibrational tracking and 2 anchors daily for 30 days, then evaluate with data. Did your response time improve? Did your revenue change? Did conversations shift? Use simple metrics. The goal is not fantasized metamorphosis. The goal is measurable change. Now, practicalities. Keep a small notebook or a note on your phone called vibration log. Each check. Note the emotion, the imagined outcome if you stayed in it, and the chosen emotion. After a week, look for patterns. Notice the common triggers. Set a micro experiment for the following week aimed at a single trigger. For example, I notice fear spikes when I price. Next week, my experiment is to price 3 offers at my baseline without apology. Small experiments break the tyranny of perfection. Accountability accelerates change. Pair up with one person for weekly check-ins. If you want a stronger scaffold, hire a coach for a short, focused period. The point is to create external friction against the easy slide back into misaligned defaults. External friction is not failure. It is structure. There will be days you cannot access the chosen emotion. You will have mornings when panic arrives, and there is no choice but to sit with it. The ritual includes those days. Name, imagine, then choose a micro shift, 5 breaths, a 90-second walk, a 25-word email that communicates a boundary. The practice is not removal of uncomfortable feelings. It is the capacity to act differently in their presence. I end this section with a concrete challenge. For the next 30 days, do vibrational tracking 3 times daily and pick 2 anchors you will keep without negotiation. No rationalization. No waiting for motivation. After 30 days, compare your notes. If nothing changed, I will not argue with you, but I will ask you to look at your log and tell me what you actually did. Most people will see enough fractures in the old prediction to continue. The question that follows is unavoidable. If this simple regimen begins to change what you see, are you willing to scale it? In the next section, I will show you precisely how those early shifts compound into visible life changes. I will map the small wins and the typical setbacks you will encounter as the new pattern meets reality. Stay with me, because the future you are avoiding is also the future you could choose. If you follow the work, the first changes are almost ridiculously small, but they matter. I want you to picture 3 mornings. On day 1, you wake with the same low hum of worry. You do the ritual, choose curiosity, and answer 3 emails instead of avoiding them. On day 7, you notice a thought that used to trigger paralysis. They will say no, and it now registers as only a thought. On day 30, a client offers a project because you answered with clarity and confidence. These are the micro moves that compose a new life. Let me be concrete about what shifts and how you will notice it. First, your perception widens. When your baseline emotion is less contracted, your scanning for opportunities becomes more generous. You notice conversations that might lead somewhere. You see a colleague's side project and imagine collaboration instead of envy. That change in sight is the exact mechanism by which opportunities that were always there become visible to you. Second, your decisions change. When you are not habitually primed for loss, you evaluate offers differently. You stop defaulting to, "I'll take anything," and start asking what fits your time, value, and boundaries. That pause might sound small. It is not. One negotiated contract at a fair rate compounds over months. Money is always chaotic, but the cumulative effect of better choices shows up as fewer emergencies and more predictability. Third, your relationships calibrate. People sense when you are congruent. If you stop sending hidden messages of unworthiness, texting needy, apologizing for being ambitious, withholding yourself to test loyalty, others respond differently. You attract collaborators instead of competitors. That social alignment matters because success is social as much as individual. I promised examples, so here are a few that are not theoretical. Anna, from the previous section, kept the 1-hour email promise. Within a month, she had 3 conversations she would previously have stalled. She moved her pricing for 1 repeat client. The client accepted. Anna's confidence was not a performance. It was the feedback loop. She acted differently, the world responded, and her body updated its expectation. She did not manifest money out of thin air. She stopped moving in ways that kept money away. Consider Lena. She had a history of avoiding direct conversations about money and relationships. She practiced the ritual and picked an anchor, 1 honest money conversation a month. The first conversation was awkward. She stumbled. Her partner listened. The second month, she was clearer. The repetition lowered the internal cost of visibility. Their shared budget improved. Lena's life did not become perfect, but the habitual avoidance that had cost them stability slowly dissolved. There are also counterexamples, because you need to see the full terrain. People who apply the ritual but skirt the behavioral anchors often report spiritual uplift and no structural change. They feel kinder to themselves and then ignore invoices. That feels good and is insufficient. The ritual without action is a placebo for avoidance. I tell clients, if you want different outcomes, do the inner work and follow it with measurable outer work. What does measurable outer work look like? I recommend 3 domains to track for the first 90 days. Respond. If you notice anxiety spikes around selling, create a micro-experiment. Script 3 short value statements you can use in conversations and test them in 3 real interactions. Measure the outcome. Repeat. The principle is practice outside the comfort zone, measure, iterate. You must also attend to the nervous system. Practices that support the body's sleep, movement, brief exposure to stress in controlled doses make emotional recalibration possible. In short, don't treat the work like only a mindset program. It is chemical. Cortisol, sleep debt, blood sugar, and social isolation all degrade your ability to hold new vibrations. I coach clients to treat their biology as a partner in change. Small, consistent movement and micronutrient attention amplify the effect of the ritual. There is a social dynamic worth naming. When your vibration changes, your tribe will react. Some friends will celebrate. Others will misunderstand. You will lose permission to complain in the way you used to. That can be lonely. Prepare for it. As you shift, seek alignment not through affirmation, but through competence. Join small groups where visible work is the norm. Find 1 or 2 colleagues who will push you to publish, price, and show up. Let's return to the timeline and the specific signs you can expect. In weeks 1 to 2, expect heightened awareness and discomfort. The ritual will reveal how often you default to scarcity. You will probably feel worse briefly. That is normal. In weeks 3 to 6, your behavioral anchors begin to bite. You will see small wins, a client responds, a conversation deepens, your inbox clarity reduces friction. In months 2 to 3, patterns emerge. Decisions reset. People around you notice the difference. That is when the compound effect begins. Imagine a ledger. Small acts are credited like pennies. Early on, the account looks unchanged because pennies are invisible. Over months, the pennies add up. The crucial thing is the accounting. Track, do not narrate. A log prevents the soothing story that nothing has happened. It creates evidence, and evidence is how the nervous system accepts new possibility. I want to be clear, this is not a feel-good narrative. It is a practical psychology of how internal attention reshapes behavior and, through behavior, reshapes external circumstances. The universe, as I use that word, is the ecology you influence with your posture and actions. When congruence changes, the ecology responds. But it responds to alignment, not to evasive affirmations. Before I move to the next point, I will name the fragility. The new pattern is vulnerable to stress. Under pressure, people revert. That is why the ritual must be a non-negotiable anchor. When the world tightens, the smallest consistent act, 60 seconds of naming, imagining, choosing, creates a micro break in the reflexive slide back into misalignment. If you miss the ritual for several days, restart without judgment and recommit. The point is steadiness, not purity. If you have followed this, you see the shape of the future alternative. It's not fantastical. It's austere and cumulative. It asks for repeated small acts in service of different defaults. If you apply it, your life becomes legible in a new way. Opportunities show up differently. Money choices shift. Relationships change. You will be tested. The last part of this piece will hold the mirror and ask what you will actually do tonight. It will give a simple next step you can do before sleep that signals whether you are moving toward responsibility or clinging to comforting denial. That question is the hinge. Let me not soften what I am about to say. You have been manifesting all along. You have been a faithful manifester of what you most believe. If your life reads as a ledger of near misses and excuses, that ledger is your evidence. My job has been to show you how the evidence got created and how you can begin to change it. The responsibility is yours now. I will end by giving you a mirror and one concrete step you can take tonight. First, a compact summary. The pattern we traced is consistent. A desire appears, a hinge thought arrives, the body tightens, protective behavior follows, and the outcome confirms the old story. That loop is efficient and conservative. It protects identity at the cost of possibility. The law that governs these outcomes, the law of predominant vibration, is simple. Reality responds to what you habitually emit, not to your occasional pleas. Change the habit and you change the answer. Now the mirror. Ask yourself 3 short, honest questions. 1. When the last opportunity appeared, what did I do first, act or prepare for failure? 2. Which repeated sentence about money or love do I tell myself daily and without thinking? 3. What single visible act did I avoid this week because I feared how it would land? Do not answer with defense. Answer with a clean ledger note. If you flinch, that flinch is data. That data shows the line you have painted for yourself. If you want a practical test, here is the micro challenge I want you to do tonight. It takes 90 seconds. Sit with a small piece of paper or a note on your phone. Write down the thought you most repeat about scarcity. Be specific. Don't write, "I'm broke." Write the actual sentence you hear in your head. Then ask, if that thought were true for the next 30 days, what would my reality look like? Be concrete: clients lost, invitations refused, savings not attempted. Finally, write the one corrective action you will take tomorrow morning that contradicts the thought. Make it visible and uncomfortable. Price call, publish draft, say yes to a meeting, answer the email. This tiny ritual forces translation from thought to policy. If you do nothing else in the coming week, do those 3 things every night. Name the thought. Imagine the outcome. Act the contradictory move in the morning. Repeat. This is the shortest path from awareness to arresting the cycle. It is not glamorous. It is essential. You will want a checklist of next steps. Here it is, tight and usable. Step 1. Commit to vibrational tracking 3 times daily for 30 days. Step 2. Pick 2 anchors, 1 financial, 1 visibility, and keep them daily. Step 3. Keep a simple log of emotions and actions. Step 4. Run a weekly review and adjust 1 micro-experiment. Step 5. Find 1 accountability partner or coach. If you follow those steps with brutal honesty, life will stop mirroring the old script as quickly as your body allows. Expect resistance. It will come in 3 masks. The first mask is moral superiority. I don't need to hustle like that. The second is impatience, if not now, never. The third is shame. I'm exposed when I try. Name each when it appears and do the opposite small act. That method has outperformed pep talks in my work. For those who want a slightly longer experiment, try this 7-day schedule. Day 1. Start vibrational tracking and answer every professional message within your chosen window. Day 2. Publish 1 short piece of visible work. Day 3. Set a baseline price and make 1 offer at that price. Day 4. Initiate a money conversation that is overdue. Day 5. Review the log and note triggers. Day 6. Repeat the most challenging move. Day 7. Write a brief report of what changed. If you complete the 7 days, you will have moved from hypothesis to data. I will not pretend this is an emotional vacation. The work is uncomfortable because identity must be negotiated. You will grieve a version of yourself who was morally superior to visible success. Grief is a necessary cost. Treat it kindly. Allow the loss. But do not let grief become an excuse to return to the pattern that created the suffering. Before I close, 2 modes of compassion I want you to hold. 1 is ruthless clarity. You must own the ways you helped create the problem. That ownership is not self-attack. It is power. The other is steady kindness. Change is slow and requires failure, readjustment, and practical support. Hold both clear responsibility and patient practice. Finally, a small practical invitation. Tonight, in the last 5 minutes before you sleep, do the 90-second test. Write the sentence. Imagine the 30-day reality. Commit to 1 corrective act for tomorrow. That act will tell you where you are in this story: denial, analysis, or repair. Your future will not be decided by inspiration. It will be decided by which small acts you make routine. If you have stayed with me to the end, thank you. If you choose to act, do it without spectacle. Keep your log. Share your one takeaway in the comments, your city